I can tell you is that the stakes are raised. They have been in this conflict and engaged in some way for 5.5 months now, or been ready to jump back in to go to war. I can tell you today, given the fact that there were overnight strikes on Iran just these last operations are taking on a new meaning. I asked the admiral who oversees the ship as well as the destroyers if there is a heightened threat alert. He said, look, we are always looking for threats, and he didn't necessarily say that there was a heightened threat alert, but I do think it is notable that you have the destroyer here coming close to the ship in this moment of high intensity, right? You had the ceasefire, things calmed down, there was the funeral in Iran where there was a pause in the negotiations, and these last few days have really changed the calculus. And so we'll have to wait and see if there will be more strikes. We know that the 2 aircraft carriers are capable of that, as well as these destroyers that we know have been used since the beginning of the war with those Tomahawk missiles targeting land targets in Iran. But also that destroyer right there, among several others, it has intercepted ballistic missiles and drones that were directly targeting the Abraham Lincoln. This ship I'm on right now is considered a high-value target, and that destroyer right there, that destroyer right there has intercepted multiple threats from Iran, with Iran trying to hit this ship. Now, also, it's worth noting that part of Iran's military strategy has been this sort of cost imbalance with these cheap drones and the military using more expensive ballistic missiles and other ways of taking it down. I'm told that they're trying to evolve and use cheaper weapons, but it's a very active, dynamic environment out here. The president today said that there have been many attacks against the Abraham Lincoln. I wonder what you can tell us about the attacks you have fended off, what you've seen.
Since we've gotten here, clearly during Epic Fury, the Iranians were looking for opportunities to attack this ship. I think we're very well defended. They don't get close.
Today they targeted military bases. Have you seen the threats against the Abraham Lincoln go down in recent weeks and months, and more toward the land?
Yeah, I think it's cyclical, and you'd have to ask, Iran why they're picking what they're picking. But I think we're a very hard target because we move, and some of those land-based targets are not as difficult because they're obviously fixed. So, I think I understand that Iran would probably want to go after things that they have a higher confidence level that they can attack.
We're here on the flight deck of the USS Abraham Lincoln near the Strait of Hormuz, where flight ops are happening. And you can see behind me here, there's an F-18 that's getting ready to land. It has a hook on its tail, and as soon as it lands, it tries to capture one of these wires on the ground. If not, the pilot has to go full throttle to take off again and come back around. So here we go. Here's this. So there you saw it. The plane just landed here. There are flight operations that are continuous throughout the day in and around the Strait of Hormuz. This is happening as tensions are escalating between the U.S. and Iran, and these fighter pilots here have played a crucial role since the beginning of the war. They were the first to take off to drop bombs on Iran. They've been doing defensive missions, but of course, given how dynamic everything is, that could change quickly.
Let's go live right now to CNN's Pamela Brown aboard the USS Abraham Lincoln in the Arabian Sea, where the service members are on high alert right now. Pamela, walk us through what you're learning.
That's right, Wolf. The captain of this ship, Dan Keeler, told everyone on board on the loudspeaker that, quote, things are heating up here. We are near the Iranian coastline, near the Strait of Hormuz, and given the escalating tensions, everyone here has a different posture. The captain of the ship said that they have been directed by the administration to have a high state of readiness. He emphasized that that is always the case on this ship. They are always ready to go. But given what's happened over these last couple of nights, there certainly is a different feeling here on this ship. And we know, Wolf, this ship has been a target of the Iranians over the last several months, really since the beginning of the war. And there have been fighter jets and other capabilities like the warships and destroyers that have protected this ship. And I want to show you one of those aircraft that has been part of that protection. Right now you're looking at an E-2 here on the flight deck. You hear the engine roaring. This E-2, I'm told, has been an essential asset because it detects threats from far away. That dome on top of it is what's called a radar, and it can detect those threats, whether they're small drones, missiles, anything else. And so often these E-2s will go up in the air and go alongside the other aircraft to protect them. So today, Wolf, on this landing pad here where we are, we've seen a very fast, quick tempo of flights taking off and flights landing. Now I'm told so far they have been pretty routine in terms of going to do surveillance over the Strait of Hormuz and defensive operations. But what I can tell you is, given what happened the last couple of nights where, according to CINTCOM, around 170 targets were hit, there is an open question here on the ship whether there will be more strikes. That has not been ruled out. And so the pilots here, the crew members, they are ready to go. Earlier today, we saw one of the warships and destroyers that protects the Abraham Lincoln come nearby. There's more than around a dozen that are here in the sea to protect this aircraft carrier, this high-value target. So people on board I've been speaking with say they actually feel pretty safe given the capabilities, the defensive capabilities. There's around 7 layers of that. But at the same time, there is an acute awareness of things escalating here, Wolf.
I know you had a chance, Pamela, to speak with the commanding officer of the USS Abraham Lincoln, where you are. How are military members on board? There are about 5,400 sailors and Marines who are on board the aircraft carrier. How are they reacting to news of this escalation? And are there steps that they're taking to prepare potentially, God forbid, for an Iranian strike?
Well, they're always on high alert, is what I'm told. And I'm told by talking to the commanding officer here, the admiral in charge, and others, that they always assume the Iranians were trying to target them, right? The Iranians have tried to use ballistic missiles, they've tried to use drones, all kinds of different ways to target this ship right here. And so in terms of being on high alert for any threats, I'm told that it's just like any other day. Now, in terms of whether this ship will be involved in any strikes, the pilots I've been speaking to who have been involved in combat since the beginning say there has been so much touch and go. And actually, Wolf, I want to swing around here. Hopefully we can show this helicopter taking off right here, just so you can see some of the activity happening as night falls here on the USS Abraham Lincoln. As I said, the aircraft have been taking off and landing at a very fast tempo. And basically the pilots I spoke to, Wolf, who are the ones who told me they've been dodging missiles up in the air and drones and so forth, they say there has been so many changes and pivots, so many times where it looked like they were going to launch strikes and then they pulled back. So they said, look, they're kind of unfazed in this moment, especially after going through active combat for so many months, but they're ready to go if need be. Wolf?
Tell us a little bit more, Pamela, about that destroyer, part of that aircraft carrier battle group that's there, which has various air defense capabilities that potentially could help protect the everybody aboard the U.S. Aircraft carrier where you are.
You know, Wolf, talking to the sailors here, they say they feel safe because of destroyers like what we saw earlier today, the Peterson warship. Basically, it's one of more than a dozen that are around here. And it is the point of the tip of the spear. Its main job is to be a shield for this aircraft carrier, Wolf. It has a number of capabilities, defensive, offensive, is able to launch Tomahawk missiles onto the land. It has what's called an Aegis radar, which looks for any threats in the area, large and small, and to be able to take down those threats if they're coming toward this aircraft carrier. And what I'm told from officials, if there have been numerous times that the destroyers have had to intervene to eliminate threats, and that they are very capable of eliminating those threats before they get close enough to the aircraft carrier. But of course, Wolf, it is such an important tool here and resource for the Navy to protect, for protection, and for a defense. And it has anti-submarine defenses as well, just a wider range. But then there's also the cost ratio of these small drones the Iranians have been using as part of its war strategy to sort of overcome U.S. defenses in terms of these expensive missiles that are being used to take them down. And so I talked to the admiral on board here about that, and they said they're trying to find less expensive ways to eliminate those threats like drones. But regardless, there are destroyers like the one I was just talking about, warships like that are making the sailors on board this ship right now feel very safe, even in this very tense, active, dynamic environment. Wolf?
How long have these 5,400 or so sailors and Marines who are crew members of the aircraft carrier, how long have they been away from home?
A long time. I mean, many of them have been away from home since November. It's a little under 5,000, I'm told now, but many of them, they got on this ship last November. It went to the Indo-Pacific, and then it was rerouted here in late January. And then this ship and the fighter pilots were part of the first wave of strikes against Iran. They have been at sea pretty much since November. They've had a couple of very quick port stops, but it wasn't 24 hours. And so they tell me here on board that this is the longest deployment in terms of consecutive days for an aircraft carrier. They talk about how it's hard. I've talked to many pilots, sailors, crew members who have had children born while they've been on deployment that they have never met. They do say it weighs on them, but at the same time they have to compartmentalize. They understand why they are here, what the mission is, and well, they don't know when they're going back. Sometimes it can get really tough, they tell me. Some days are like Groundhog Day, as you would expect when you're out at sea on a ship. And a lot of the crew members, I should note, on this ship are young. They're around 40% are, I think, of 25 years of age and younger. I interviewed a sailor today, only 20 years old, and he's supervising driving the ship. So these are young sailors, for the most part, who all have jobs and they're working around the clock. We've seen it. I mean, this aircraft carrier doesn't slow down. It doesn't go to sleep like the rest of us. There is round-the-clock operations. And every sailor here has a job to do, from working in the galley, preparing food, more than 17,000 meals a day, to sure these aircraft get off the ground safely and land safely, from driving the ship. Everyone has a job to do. But they also told me that they miss their families, as you would expect. And they all have certain meals in mind they want to get home to. One told me today they can't wait to have good Chinese food when they get home. Another told me they can't wait to have Chipotle. So they definitely have their wish list for when they get back home after this deployment, whenever that might end. But that's very uncertain, especially in this dynamic environment we're in right now, how long this deployment will last, Wolf.
Pamela, when you and I were discussing what to expect when you were going out on this assignment, we thought it was going to be a relatively peaceful adventure for you aboard the aircraft carrier. Little did we know that this war was escalating big time right now, and who knows what's going to happen in the days and weeks ahead. Pamela Brown, to you, stay safe over there. We'll stay in close touch with you, of course, and thank all those crew members on behalf of all of us for what they're doing and sacrificing. Pamela Brown aboard the USS Abraham Lincoln.
Well, let me just set the stage. First of all, you're seeing what's called a walk to look for any debris. This is an exercise making sure that they pick up anything that could end up in an engine, because we're here in the hangar, and these are some of the fighter jets that have been used during this conflict from very early on. So this includes maintenance crews and pilots. But Brianna, as we talk about this ongoing conflict, the last 2 nights of strikes, what I can tell you is here on the USS Abraham Lincoln, things are heating up. And those are the exact words from the captain here of the ship, Dan Keeler. He said that the White House and the administration, CENTCOM, has told the ship to be on high alert. He says that's always the case. There is always a high state of readiness. But the context here is that tensions are escalating. There's already been 2 nights of strikes, and there is uncertainty about what is to come, whether there will be more strikes or not. Now, I want to show you this. As I mentioned, these F-18s and also the F-35s have really been fighter jet workhorses during this war. And I want to show you these symbols right here. These are drones right here that this fighter jet has taken out during this conflict that started 5.5 months ago. These are missiles that have been taken out just by this fighter jet alone. Every single fighter jet I've seen, or just about everyone I've seen here in the hangar and up above on the flight deck, has these symbols. They also have other ones like dropping bombs, how many bombs the fighter jets have dropped, as well as submarine buster stickers that they put on there if they've taken down a submarine. I saw one earlier today that had taken down an Iranian submarine. So they put these symbols on to mark what these fighter jets have done so far in the conflict. And people here on board the ship, Brianna and Boris, they know that this is not over. As one official told me, the ceasefire is for at least temporarily seized. And we've now learned that in these last 2 nights, around 170 targets have been hit at Iran. And as you all have been talking about, there's a lot of speculation and talk and increased rhetoric about what's going to come next in this conflict.